All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a case file that starts in the absolute last place you'd ever expect a horror story to unfold. We're talking about a perfectly ordinary, government-approved highway expansion project. It's a modern construction site cutting right through farmland that had been completely undisturbed for generations. But as the crew soon found out, this project dug up a terrifying 60-year-old secret.
Picture this for a second. You are a highly practical site engineer. Your entire life revolves around concrete, steel, and strict deadlines. Now imagine discovering a skeleton buried not just face down, but bound in iron, completely bringing your massive infrastructure project to a grinding halt. You have to ask yourself, why on earth would a grave be deliberately dug to face the wrong way? That is the exact question we're looking at today, and the answer reveals why some graves aren't actually meant to keep the dead in. They're meant to keep something else out.
So, our timeline kicks off with a woman named Meher. She is a completely no-nonsense, blunt engineer brought in specifically because this highway project is inexplicably falling apart. Heavy machinery keeps breaking down for absolutely zero diagnosable reason. 3 separate work crews have quit outright in just 1 week without saying a word. And on 2 separate nights, site security guards have simply vanished. Phones disconnected, houses totally empty. Look, we've all had bad days at work, but this was on another level. Still, Meher just assumes she's dealing with extreme labor disputes.
While the real tipping point happens literally 3 days into Meher's time there. An excavator operator who's out there clearing old farmland hits a solid object exactly 2 meters down in the dirt. It's not a pipe, it's not a rock. It is a completely undocumented, unmarked grave with absolutely no headstone and no record in any local land survey.
The crew clears away the soil and finds a truly visceral scene. The skeleton is buried completely face down in the dirt. The feet are positioned exactly where the head should be, and, maybe most terrifying of all, the ankles are bound tightly together with the remains of a severely corroded iron chain. This single site terrified a veteran foreman, a guy who had built roads across 3 different states, so deeply that he flat out refused to ever touch the site again.
Part 1. Anatomy of a Churel, a spirit born of fury.
With the work totally halted by the terrified crew, the local landowner's elderly aunt, this incredibly sharp woman named Ruxana, steps in to explain the terrifying history behind this grave. The woman buried there was named Fatima, and she died in that exact field over 60 years ago. According to Ruxana, Fatima was pregnant, unmarried, and completely abandoned by both the man responsible and her village. The village decided that burying her death was just much easier than dealing with her shame.
And this brilliantly highlights a crucial distinction in the local folklore. Ruxana explains that Fatima didn't just become your standard ghost. Because she died with such unavenged grief and rage, she became a Churel. A Churel is a very specific type of spirit born out of pure, unadulterated fury, and it's specifically directed at the men who wronged her, or even just men who look away when a woman is wrong.
The lore lays out these very specific physical traits too. A Churel has feet that are turned entirely backward, and she appears perfectly beautiful right up until the moment she attacks. Suddenly, the bizarre condition of the grave makes total sense. You see, the iron chain and the face-down burial weren't acts of post-mortem cruelty. They were a desperate 60-year-old containment strategy by the village. It was literally a promise dug 2 meters into the earth to keep her trapped.
Now Meher, she's a practical bureaucrat. She's not buying a single word of this folklore. Delays cost money, right? So she stubbornly authorizes a night shift to make up for lost time. But around midnight, a young worker clearing brush near the disturbed grave just starts laughing. It's this delighted laugh, like he's having a wonderful, friendly conversation in the pitch black with an invisible woman.
The contrast between what he thinks is happening and reality is pretty chilling. To this entranced worker, he's just seeing a beautiful, simply dressed woman gently asking for his help to walk her home. But Meher is watching from a distance, and what she sees is his shadow on the moonlit ground stepping backward even as his physical body seems to be walking forward. Something in the dark was slowly, patiently walking him backward toward the tree line, one polite word at a time.
Meher literally springs into action. She grabs his arm hard enough to leave a bruise and physically drags him back into the harsh glare of the site lights. He fights her, like genuinely fights her, calling her jealous, completely under the entity's spell. But the second the sun comes up, he stops fighting, blinks, and has absolutely zero memory of the entire event.
The only evidence left behind are these raw red marks circling both of his ankles, right in the exact spot where an iron chain would sit.
Part 2. The corrupt land deal, where greed takes over.
Meher is shaken, obviously, but she's incredibly stubborn, so she pivots right back to the paperwork, searching for a human motive behind all this. And the records reveal a remarkably clear-cut case of corruption. You see, 12 months ago, this highway was actually planned to go a full kilometer south, but 9 months ago, a silent partner firm quietly bought Fatima's plot at a steep discount. Just a few weeks later, the route was miraculously changed to cut right through that newly purchased land, saving the firm millions of dollars. Somebody knew exactly what was buried out in that field. They bought the cheap land, betting that 60 years of dirt and an old iron chain would hold the secret just long enough for them to collect their payout.
Armed with this massive paper trail, Meher goes to confront the contracting firm's project liaison, a guy named Irfan. Irfan is this smug, arrogant guy. Honestly, the kind of corporate liaison we've all unfortunately had to deal with at some point. He just completely waves off the grave as nothing more than local farmer superstition designed to hold up his big payday. He literally tells Meher that ghosts don't hold up construction deadlines.
Part 3. The climax in the dark, and Irfan's massive mistake.
So Irfan makes the absolute worst decision possible and stays late at the site just to prove his point. A little later, Meher hears him laughing in the darkness, that same delighted laugh, and she just sprints toward him. In the final half-second before the floodlights completely fail, she sees the Churel drop its polite disguise. The beautiful smile just vanishes. The teeth and eyes become totally monstrous. The feet are turned backward at angles no human ankle could actually survive. And the entity violently reaches for Irfan.
Meher doesn't exactly have folklore training, but she remembers Roxana's one big rule. Iron. Always iron. It's the whole reason the original grave was bound in a chain to begin with. She grabs a heavy length of rebar from a nearby pallet and swings it desperately between Irfan and the entity. She connects, and the Churel recoils with this horrific sound, which gives Meher just enough time to drag Irfan bodily back into the safety of the lights. Now, Irfan does survive the encounter physically, but psychologically, he is completely hollowed out. That arrogant liaison is just gone. In a total 180, he immediately liquidates his entire financial stake in the contracting firm, and he uses all that money to personally fund a proper, genuine archaeological review of the site. It's a pretty stark reminder for all of us. Whatever he saw out there in the darkness convinced him that some deaths absolutely cannot be settled with a simple payout.
Part 4. The resolution and the twist. Finally, a proper burial.
So, with the project totally suspended, the surviving villagers finally exhume Fatima the right way. They give her a name, and they acknowledge the immense tragedy of what happened to her. And this is the moment Meher realizes something incredibly profound. The Churel was never actually contained by the corroded iron chain or the face-down burial. She was contained by the absolute silence of the village. The chain was really just what that silence looked like when they dug it out of the ground. Once the silence was finally broken, the construction delays stopped completely, and the highway was rerouted right back to its original path.
Meher drives away, totally believing it's all finally over. The corrupt land deal collapsed, the debt has been paid. Fast forward 3 months later, though, she's working late in a completely different city. She's walking to her car in this empty, quiet, concrete parking garage when she notices something on the dusty ground right behind her. Right there, on the concrete, are fresh, damp footprints. They are unmistakably a woman's bare feet, but every single toe is pointing in the complete opposite direction of travel. Meher doesn't even look back. She just locks herself in her car, left to wonder if the entity actually followed her or if Fatima simply wanted one honest witness to know that being buried properly isn't always the exact same thing as being at peace. Which brings us to this absolutely haunting quote from our source text that brilliantly summarizes the whole case file. Every grave facing the wrong way is a promise that someday, something might not be able to keep. It's a really stark reminder about the true nature of buried secrets and historical wrongs.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final, chilling question to ponder the next time you find yourself walking all alone in the dark. If you saw fresh footprints behind you pointing the wrong way, would you wait around to ask why? Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Keep your eyes open and stay safe out there.